Well, welcome everybody. We are trying something new tonight, whenever you're listening to this, but for us, it's tonight. We are having what I'm going to call a stewardship masterclass. I've asked four people to come and just chat specifically, not about stewardship in general, but about stewarding money. One of these things that we talk about periodically, many times, though, I think. The conversation doesn't go broad enough and deep enough. And so I had this idea, and maybe it's a bad idea. We'll see in about 20 or so minutes. But I had this idea that we'd invite some people on and just ask questions and see where the conversation goes. Because it's my deep conviction that the Bible teaches, and it's been my experience, and I suspect the others here will agree, that stewarding money is one of the greatest gifts and joys that God's given us. It's also an incredible responsibility. And it's also my experience as a teacher that some things are better or sometimes only caught, not taught. And so I think this conversation will be an interesting way to go about all this. So we have some questions. Welcome, everybody. Maybe we've had a few new guests and different people join in to Hope for Life over the last year and a half, 2 years. So why don't we just quickly go around the room and just share your name? And we'll tell you what, I'll ask the first question. And then as you do that, why don't you just briefly introduce yourself? And then we'll dive in. So the first question I asked you was just to share a story about stewardship that impacted you, somewhere that you caught something as you experienced stewardship in action. So let's see, Ed, let's start with you. Stewardship in action, and I already said your name.
Ooh, my name's Ed, and I get the chance to be married to Sandra, and I have I want to talk about stewardship in action. Being I got the chance to ask a guy once whether he and his wife would be the guardian of our kids on the off chance we died. So this is a guardianship will question. He said, sure. And then I asked, so are you guardian for anyone else? And his response was, I think I'd like to tell you, or I'd hope that not all of you die at once. And what that really said to me was, you are actually ready to significantly change your life if at that point in time, a number of us parents would have died. They would have had a lot of kids in their house, but he didn't think that chance was going to happen that often. Where that turns into practice for me is a time when about 8 of us families had the chance to, I call it backstopping. So backstopping potential problems like guardianship or encouraging opportunities, but about 8 of us families got the chance one year to say, we would like to backstop, we'd like to say yes to this project if no one else steps up to this project. And same as this person who said they would be our guardian, all of us said we would like to backstop the financial part of this project. None of us actually had to, but it was a very, very good learning experience to be able to put our resources that God has put us in charge of to manage, to put it at risk, and just how much risk could we put it at. So that's my backstopping potential problems and encouraging opportunities story.
So just to clarify, you said that if the money didn't come in, it was coming from you, you and this other group.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we actually committed to a whole bunch of money, which actually turned out to be probably about 15 years worth of normal giving to this organization, maybe 10, if all things went poorly. And none of us really had to pony up for that. We all ponied up what we thought we wanted to pony up for the transaction. But if worse came to worse, we would all be at about 15 years worth of giving all at once. And we thought that would be okay. We could borrow on our house and we could give based on that.
Neat. Okay, thanks. Faye, how about you? A stewardship story.
Well, I had so many inspirational ideas here. The first thing I went to was, of course, the Bible, and Luke 21:2, the widow's offering. She gave so little, and yet Jesus said it was all she had to give, and she gave it. The other night, Dave and I watched a Netflix movie called Wishman. It's only available till June 2nd, and
Pressure's on,
so
everybody.
inspirational. It was one individual can make a difference. There's a daily bread story where a woman in line at a grocery store was buying birthday party things for her daughter and realized she couldn't pay for all of them. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to have to put some of these back." And the woman behind her pulled out her credit card and paid for the whole works. And I thought, little things count. That just was above and beyond. And I'm watching Hope for Life and the donations that come in there. Suddenly there's a large amount for pastor retirement. And that inspires me to watch and see where things are needed and see what little bits can help.
So you're hoping, as well as I am, that we fire both of them soon and they just retire? Because that's what I thought. That's what's going to happen.
When they're done with God's work, they still have things in their pocket to donate to other inspirational places.
I'm starting to get worried about my job security. This is not a great beginning to this whole thing.
You're on mute, Tim.
I'm not on mute.
You're still on mute.
Can the rest of you hear me?
Can't hear you.
What in the world?
Now you're back.
There you go.
Okay, sorry, I'm not on mute. My internet apparently sucks, which some people will laugh at because even though I don't have bad internet, I'm beginning to have a track record of cutting out in critical junctures of meetings.
Yeah, you're frozen.
How about now?
We can hear you, but you're not moving much.
Okay. Just a second. I'm going to make my mom the host and see if that solves our problem, and I can cut this out later.
You're back.
You're back now.
Back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, Jeff, how about you? Why don't you share a story, stewardship story?
Sure. So I'm Jeff Moe. Me and my wife, Janie, or my wife and I, for the grammar police, we started coming to Hope for Life about, say, 3 months before the lockdown of the pandemic started. So call it the end of 2019. So we've had a chance to meet some of you, but many of you we have not yet met. And so would love to do that once things are much more open and available. So my story, I thought a lot about it. In the end, I'm sorry, Tim, it's not as straightforward financial as maybe you wanted. But I think the one that impacted me personally quite a bit and taught me a lot was Christmas dinners. So my parents and I immigrated to Canada when I was about 3 years old. So in my early elementary years, we were somewhat isolated. We didn't really have very much of a kind of Canadian connection. And Christmas wasn't really a thing, and I was barely introduced to Christianity at all at that point. But there was a couple named Clarence and Cheryl, and they just came and befriended our family, and then they started inviting us over to their Christmas family dinners. And at the time, I didn't think too much of it. I was just a young kid, and there's this great Canadian food, and they were giving me presents every year, and this was amazing. But reflecting back, it must have been a sacrifice for them because we were the only outsiders. There was Clarence and Cheryl and their 3 kids and then a few of the grandkids. And that was Christmas dinner. And then my mom, my dad, and I. And that was kind of the Christmas dinner that they had. And just the sacrifice that it is to invite essentially strangers, especially to the rest of your family, strangers, to your Christmas dinner, because you wanted to show God's love to these, new immigrants to the country. That really made an impact, and they were really instrumental to my faith walk as well.
That's really
Nice.
neat. Yeah, so many times actually the most precious things that we have that are the hardest to give up are not money, but something like your family dinner. That just might be more precious than a lot of money. That's really neat. Okay, Mom, how about you?
For Dad, for Doug and I, it was one of the significant things was a story of a man in our first church. He always loved to give, and he told us a story one night when we were over for coffee of how after 10 years he did up his books and he knew the amount that he had given for 10 years. And then he figured out his profit, and it was almost identical. And he just looked at us and said, you can never outgive God. Always give to God. And one other one that was quite meaningful to me was way back when Doug was finishing up his master's, and he wanted to do a missionary component to that, and he was going to, I can't remember, it was either Ukraine or Ghana at that point to teach, but we didn't know how we would be able to afford this happening. And then one day his mentor of many years calls him up, takes him out for lunch, and finds out what he's doing and looks him in the eye, and he says, so do you have everything you need? And Doug says, nope, not yet, but we're trusting God for it. So he takes out his checkbook, he signs a check, and he hands it over, and he says, just let me know what amount you'll need that you've written on the check. And I just remember that for two things, just that God provides so amazingly, and also the challenge, would I be willing to respond to a need the way that he did and with such joy?
That is a great, great backstopping story.
Yeah.
What do you need at the end of the weeks, at the end of your collection period? How much is my check going to be for? Just tell me. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
It was amazing. And he did that probably 3 or 4 times over the next 10 years.
That you know of with you. Love it.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Amazing.
blank check story. It's just too bad the next generation can't have the blank Venmo story. Only Tim got that.
By the way, I should have said this off the top, but I asked each of these folks to talk to their spouses, but I didn't want to have 9 people talking. So I believe all of them to some extent are representing a family, not just themselves. Anyways, okay, so that's
Ed, did
awesome.
you talk to Sandra?
I'm not going to answer that on the grounds that it will almost certainly incriminate me.
Ed, Tim.
Yeah, I said it was the intention. I'm not promising on delivery. I don't have that kind of power. Okay, so the second question is this, just briefly, but what's one of your favorite non-receivable ways to give and why? And let's go in reverse order. So Mom, why don't you start?
Well, I asked Doug, and he just said if he's aware of a need and he can meet it, if it's buying somebody something, he loves to do that. And another thing is his many mission trips over the years. He has always, and it's sometimes been sacrificial, that he would make a point to take the missionaries and then some of the local leaders out for a meal, which was like a really meaningful thing for many of them. So, and for me, I would just say time. I heard a sermon many, many years ago about why do we always talk about giving and tithing and in terms of money and not time. And that has always stuck with me. So pretty much every week I think about, okay, what are X ways I can use some of my free time this week, whether it's, baking or cooking for somebody or giving treatments to family, to people that need it, to just practical helps, meals, whatever it be. Phone calls, lots of times phone calls at night to people. So that's mine.
Neat. Jeff?
The framework that I was taught by someone wiser than myself once is that we can give of our entire life, and that stands for our labor, our influence, our finances, and our expertise. And I find that I really have joy when I'm able to give to a cause or organization or individual with kind of more than one plank of my life. So it's not just my time or not just my money, but maybe I can, my influence, maybe I know someone who could maybe donate something or help or whatever. And then my wife said, "Oh, you should tell this story to answer this question about what something you do." And I said, "Oh, I hate talking about myself." Make sure the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, right? But something that I've always had a heart for are people experiencing homelessness. It's so tragic in our society that we are so rich and yet people still live without shelter and regular food and whatnot. And to be fair, I think we do a good job of providing the basic physical needs, but I think what we fail is through dignity. And so I've really tried to give time and attention to people. And one example is I went to a convenience store, I guess it was last week, and there was a fellow who was sitting outside the convenience store and kind of asking people for toonies as they walked in. And I asked him, "Oh, what would you like to buy with that toonie?" He said he'd like a coffee. And I said, "Oh, kind of, how do you like your coffee?" He said, "Oh, the best way there is, or the only way there is, a double-double."
Like good Canadian.
I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't think I've ever bought a coffee at a convenience store in my life, maybe once. And the fellow didn't have his coffee machine even set up. So I asked him to kind of brew a new cup. And it took me a while to figure out how to actually, make this coffee. There's these fancy things that dispense either cream or milk. And I got a bunch of cream all over the counter. And so I apologize for that. But it took me 10 minutes. Janie kind of got upset because she was waiting in the car. She was wondering, well, where the heck is this guy?
I'd be wondering that too. That's totally.
But yeah, no, it was important for me to make the coffee in the way that this fellow liked it. And he seemed to really, really enjoy it. He thanked me for it. And I think ultimately it's just, sometimes it's kind of special. It's just not just, people tossing you coins or between the time he asked me and the time I came out, I think someone had given him an apple and a bottle of water, which is great. And it's providing for that individual as well. But I think I really want to kind of give him what he wanted. And that's the gift that I gave that day. So I'm not sure how it fits into my life framework. Maybe my labor definitely wasn't my expertise.
No, that's great. Can you go through those 4 things again?
Sure. L is labor.
Yeah.
I is influence. F is finances. And E is expertise.
Neat.
And I like it. Nice acronym. Nice, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, interesting. We could make this long list, and we're only a little bit through here, but so those things, we talked about giving dignity, we've talked about giving attention, we've talked about giving time, quite the diverse spread. Okay, Faye, let's come back to you. What's one of your favorite non-receivable ways to give, and why?
Well, Tim, you introduced us to Kiva. And for me, that's been a real wonderful experience. It's given in American money, so it's not receivable. And instead of a donation, it's called a loan. And they say $25 will be an amount that they can loan to an entrepreneur somewhere in the world. And they can then use that to grow their business or buy supplies that they need for it, if enough people give their $25. Well, what surprised me was it is American money. So along with the exchange, and Kiva does ask for some donation towards funding their organization. I broke it out to where if you're going to give $20 a month, you can in 2 months set aside $40. That would cover one $25 donation and everything else involved in it. So if you did that every 2 months, you'd have helped in 12 months 6 different people who are supporting a family of maybe 3, 4, 5 people. So if there were 5 people supported with every donation, you'd have helped 30 people at the end of the year. And then the $25 you gave originally comes back to you to use again to help another 5 people. And it just keeps rolling that way. The 25 that you get back is then in American dollars. If you give a little bit more to help Kiva, you can keep it rolling. And if you add just your $20 a month over time, you'll find that you've helped 100, 200 people in various places. And some are supported by groups. So if there's a group of people all supporting one person who needs a loan at that time, you're more guaranteed to get your money back, because sometimes the $25 isn't returned to you because the people go under. And so you don't get repaid all of it. But what you do can go on to help more and more people. That excites me.
Totally. Micro-lending. It's been neat, actually. If anybody listening to this is interested in that, you can talk to one of us. But there's actually a little micro-lending team that Hope for Life set up years ago, or set up, and it's been neat as we've done just what Faye said, as money comes in and it gets lent back out, to see more and more and more, and quite a lot of money's been lent now over the years. Anyways, that's awesome. Okay, back to you, Ed. Non-receivable giving.
Microfinancing, certainly one of those things. Mine actually is a story about a vehicle. So Sandra and I and Rachel are ready to go on a trip over in the UK one year. And some people in the church that we're over there churching with, we say to them, where can we rent a car for 4 months? And they say, don't rent a car, just use the one in our garage. And they really, I mean, at that point in time, they didn't know us terribly well. We were going on a full month holiday, and we're going to use their car just like that. So we say, we're going to use it. We're going to go 3,000 kilometers or something like that. I mean, we had it all mapped out as to where we're going. By the time we got to 3,000 kilometers, we were nowhere close to home. So we called them and said, we're actually past our 3,000 kilometers. What should we do now? Because we're probably 2,000 kilometers still. And they said, just see you when you're back. Tell us some stories. And that was meaningful to us, to know that what we have is not ours, not meant to be ours, meant to be used well. Turned out that it was a new vehicle. It had less kilometers on it before we started than double when we were done. I mean, it was just really kind of them. And I mean, we'd seen that done before, but not to people who aren't family and who aren't connected and who you don't necessarily need to trust or whatever those stories are. Very good learning for us to
Mhm.
put what we've been given to manage to work. And that was good for both Sandra and I. Very meaningful.
Very cool. So I'm looking at our time, and we have 4 questions. We're only going to do 2 of them for the moment. I'm going to create a break here. So just quickly, any comments you want to make on anything you've heard in the last 20 minutes from each other, or anything that's come to mind? Just brief ones. You have a minute or less.
My takeaway is life.
Nice.
What
And
was
I
the
like to
F
think-
again?
My labor, my influence, my finances, my expertise. Good,
Finances.
good,
Yes,
good takeaway.
Yeah.
absolutely. I like that too. And they cross over.
In hospitality too, I hear of people who hear someone's coming, a missionary for a while or for a long time, someone needs some housing support, and there are people who will just step up and say, well, come and live with us as long as you need. That's really special too.
Yeah, that was probably my takeaway as well, Faye, just open-ended giving. So whether it's a story about the blank check that Sharon shared, or the one with the, I don't know what you call it, the blank car that Andrew experienced, just, yeah, open-ended, just whatever you need, here it is, take as you need, and then we'll figure it out.
Neat. Yeah, I was thinking just along those lines. I think maybe the first time I saw this was something you taught years ago, Ed, but the idea of a clenched fist versus an open hand. And specifically just what that is in a world full of control freaks, including me. What it is to say that my stuff is my Heavenly Father's, my influence, everything. And so bring some into my hand, take it out of my hand, and don't let me hold it too tightly.
Don't let me hold on to my life too tightly.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, we could keep going. You got to lose your life to find it.
All that good. Yeah. I love it. Thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay.
And
This
take
is
credit.
this is a wrap for Stewardship Masterclass number 1. Thank you all so much.